We'll get started by doing a quick round of introductions to our offices, and I'll kick us off. I'm Lauren Drumgold. I'm a policy advisor at the New York City Mayor's Office of Food Policy. Our office works with city agencies and partners to make New York City's food system more healthy, equitable, and sustainable, and we're dedicated to advancing efforts to increase New Yorkers' access to affordable, nutritious, and culturally relevant foods. And our work is guided by Food Forward, which is the city's 10-year food policy plan to drive the city's food economy, food retail and accessibility, and food production, distribution, and sustainable disposal. With that, I'll pass it to Rositsa.
Thank you, Lauren, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Rositsa Ilieva, and I'm Director of Policy at the CUNY Urban Food Policy Institute. We are a research and action center based in Harlem at the CUNY Graduate School of Public Health and Health Policy, and through partnerships with community organizations, food advocates, and state and municipal government partners such as the Mayor's Office of Food Policy, we work together to evaluate existing and design new evidence-based approaches to address a variety of food problems and advance just and healthy urban food systems and communities. And I'm again echoing Lauren, really grateful for the opportunity to be with you all today and talk about how our work is also made possible thanks to NYC open data. And with that, I'll pass it over to my colleague Yvette.
Hi, everyone. My name is Yvette. I'm a research fellow at the CUNY Urban Food Policy Institute. I have been involved in some previous projects working on different dashboards and am fortunate to be on the team working on this one.
So before we get into our dashboard work, we wanted to briefly walk you through what our reporting on the city's food system and policies has looked like over the years. Our office has reported on a variety of city agency initiatives and food systems trends over time. From 2012 to 2022, the Food Metrics Report served as a narrative-style report that compiled metrics from city agency initiatives and the broader food system for a given year. This report has evolved to reflect new city programs and available data. The report includes metrics on food insecurity, city food procurement, meal service and food standards compliance, as well as food access. Food insecurity is defined as the lack of access at times to enough nutritionally adequate food for an active, healthy life for all members of a household. In the report, you'll find food insecurity rates for the city, participation rates for food and nutrition security programs, such as the Federal Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, as well as emergency food needs in the city, so food distributed by food pantries and soup kitchens. The New York City food standards set guidelines for any government facility where food is served for the over 220 million meals and snacks served each year at the city's facilities and programs. That includes schools, older adult centers, child care centers, after-school programs, shelters, public hospitals, correctional facilities, and other city programs. The standards aim to reduce the prevalence of chronic diet-related disease by increasing access to healthy foods and improving dietary intake. On food access, we focus on dietary patterns, nutrition education, and the food environment, including farmers markets, green carts. These are food carts and trucks that sell fresh fruits and vegetables and other healthy foods in neighborhoods that have historically lacked access to fresh produce. Also list the Fresh Program supermarkets. These are full-service supermarkets developed by the city's tax and zoning incentive to increase food retail in areas of high need, and city food benefit programs such as Health Bucks, which are $2 coupons that are redeemable at New York City farmers markets. And we've also reported on garden and farming programs, food manufacturing, and sustainable food waste solutions. Throughout the report, there are static maps, charts, and in the appendix, there's a pretty extensive collection of static spreadsheets of detailed metrics. So for those who this may be an introduction to, I'll show a few pages from the report here. First, as an example, here's 2 pages from our report done in 2022 on our emergency food supply gap analysis. This is a yearly analysis that calculates the difference between the pounds of emergency food distributed in neighborhoods compared to the amount of food needed in each community. This analysis accounts specifically for food that's been distributed through the city-funded Community Food Connection Program, which was formerly known as the Emergency Food Assistance Program. And the static map here shows the areas with highest need for emergency food in dark red. Here to the right, we also mentioned SNAP, which is a federally funded and locally administered food security program, where we note the number of individuals participating by borough. Lastly, I also wanted to point out an opportunity for improvement. As mentioned, the report includes a number of static spreadsheets in its appendix, and here's an example of one. This first row highlighted details the number of farms that are part of the Department of Environmental Protection's watershed program and its city funding. And this program emphasizes the importance of rural economic viability and farming practices that ensure water quality protection, which is especially important to the city as our drinking water comes from upstate watersheds. In this row of year-over-year metrics, each cell has multiple pieces of information. So it has number of farms, number of acres, dollar amount investment. So if someone wanted to know how the funding and number of participating farms changed over the years, it's not quickly digestible in this text format. To add the metrics that might be of interest to, say, food advocates and academics are buried in text and throughout these tables, which are not easily translated to, say, an Excel spreadsheet format for analysis. So if someone wanted to analyze any of these metrics here, they would need to do some significant cleaning of the spreadsheets to be ready to do. The report has received constructive feedback in the past from food advocates and academics on this reporting structure's usability, and this feedback is really helping to inform us on our approach to revamp our reporting to improve data transparency and public understanding of our key food policy progress. In 2023, our office started the New York City Food by the Numbers, which is an infographic style report focusing on key progress metrics for various food-related initiatives and outcomes. It calls out progress statistics in a clean and concise manner, overall improving the visibility of impact metrics at a glance. Also, we'll share a few pages in this format, which we've done for the past few reporting years, with our most recent report having been released this past December. This report style incorporates data visualizations, graphics, and limited text in comparison to the previous version of the report. So here we highlight the city's food education programming in schools, noting grant dollars distributed and reach to school staff and students. As you can see, we're incorporating more visuals and really trying to work on the visual appeal and like the quick knowledge of information to share with the audience. We also include some key statistics on several nutrition programs. Here we highlight 3 programs administered by the New York City Health Department to increase households' purchasing power for fresh and healthy foods, noting information such as dollars saved, participation, and redemption of program vouchers. And as a final example here, we highlight food retail access in the city, noting the total number of grocery stores in the city and 2 city programs, including the Fresh program. As mentioned, it incentivizes grocery store development in areas with limited full-service supermarkets, and the Shop Healthy NYC program, which aims to increase healthy food access and healthy habits at corner stores across the city. So now that you've seen how we've reported food metrics over the years and recent modifications that we've made, I'll touch a little bit on our plan for modernizing our report. So our office, in collaboration with CUNY Urban Food Policy Institute, will launch this publicly available dashboard anticipated for release in summer, early fall this year. And dashboards really have the advantage of being interactive. For example, having a map that you can zoom into, click for more details, filter, etc. And we're really hopeful that this solution will address key goals, including improving data transparency and the public's understanding of the food landscape in the city, especially for data accessibility and easy downloads of the data. We also are aiming to this dashboard to assist in developing and tracking outcomes related to food policies and programs. And perhaps most importantly, we want this to really be a tool for food advocates, academics, policy decision makers, and others interested in food policy to explore relevant and timely research questions. So for this dashboard, we're going to lean primarily on publicly available data sources, particularly within the New York City Open Data Portal, which allows us to expand on the existing metrics we report on in coordination with city agencies. So we're really happy to have CUNY as a collaborator for modernizing how the city communicates food systems data, and their team is leading the development and design of the dashboard, given their expertise in dashboard development. and in informing our office on opportunities for its future iterations. So with that, I'll pass it over to Rositsa and Yvette to walk us through a preview of the dashboard and a few examples of how it could be utilized.
Thank you, Lauren. Before I begin, just a quick note of what we will cover in this section. The dashboard is still in development, so today we'll be previewing a set of core themes and example visualizations. First, the static snapshots, and then we'll move into a more live interactive demo where my colleague Yvette will walk us through one section of the dashboard more in depth today. So this part is really meant to give you a sense of the overall structure and the possibilities of the dashboard. So before diving into the specific sections, I wanted to briefly orient you what will become the dashboard's homepage. This is essentially an entry point, as we like to think of it, a one-stop shop for exploring the city's food system. The structure may feel familiar to many of you. These themes across the top, like food insecurity, access, affordability, climate, and health, are aligned with the city's existing food metrics reports, which Lauren previewed in the first part of the presentation. But what is new is really the shift from static to dynamic. So instead of a once-a-year snapshot, users will now be able to interact with the data, filter it, map it, and explore trends over time. So we are bringing together data sets that are often scattered across city agencies, several of which are available through NYC open data, into this one single integrated interface. And so from here, users can dive into each section to explore specific policy areas in more depth and explore specific questions they may have in mind as a community advocate, researcher, policymaker. So with this overview, let me walk you through a few examples, starting with the food insecurity and food assistance section. So this is one of the core sections of the dashboard you saw listed in the homepage I showed a moment ago. And here we bring together key programs like SNAP, WEEK, and Community Food Connection alongside broader measures of food insecurity. Again, the goal is to show not the individual program, not just the individual program, but how they fit together within the city's overall response, and drawing on multiple data sets, including those available through NYC open data. Again, I won't go too deeply into each component here since Yvette will shortly walk us through this section in more detail through the live demo, but just wanted to give you a closer look at one of these subsections. This is Community Food Connection. So on the left, you can see trends over time in pantry visits and meals served. In the center are some key numbers, key metrics, like the number of pantries and soup kitchens. And on the right, a map showing provider locations across the city. So by combining time trends, program data, and geographic information, including data from NYC open data, we can begin to see here both the scale and the distribution at the same time. And again, this is just a preview of how some of these elements can come together, and we will see how this works dynamically in just a moment through the live demo. In this next section, we highlight the scale of the meals served through city agencies. Across 11 agencies, over 220 million meals are served annually, with high compliance with NYC food standards, which is more stringent than the federal level standards. And we also highlighted some specific agencies. We started connecting these numbers to specific agencies such as Department of Education, Department for the Aging, so with the idea to help users understand how distinct parts of the system contribute to food access. And again, we're bringing you one example in the interest of time, specifically focusing here on school food. So we can see daily averages for breakfast, lunch, and after-school meals, as well as some of the borough level distribution and trends over time. So these combined visualizations allow users to move between system-wide totals and more detailed breakdowns, again, building on publicly available datasets and agency reporting. Next, we shift to the healthy food access and retail environment theme. This section really brings together different strategies from farmers markets to food retail improvements to nutrition incentive programs, highlighting both the physical and economic access to healthy food. So here in this landing page for the theme, we preview some of the types of data and indicators users can explore in more detail in each subsection. And just to give you a sense, a little bit of a flavor how we are approaching this section of the dashboard, this is one example focused on farmers markets. So in this view, we combine market locations with background layer showing SNAP households by community districts. So users can actually begin to see not only where, so the locations where markets are located, but also how that distribution relates to potential need. And the map also highlights which markets, you'll see these, the dots highlighted in green, are those that are open year-round. and those that are more seasonal. So the metrics below summarize the share of markets accepting EBT and distributing health packs. So these are the big percentages at the bottom. And so because some of these data sets are already available through NYC open data and public data sources, the dashboard can bring together information on access, on program participation, and neighborhood need in a single view. So these will help us support a more equity-focused understanding of the food retail landscape as opposed to just the locations. In this next section, we focus on food affordability, which is a huge issue that has become increasingly important across the city. Here we look at both the trends in food costs and the gap between what food costs and what household can actually afford. So this helps us frame affordability, again, not just as a price issue, but as a broader equity challenge across the city. And again, an example of how this could translate into some specific visualizations and data representations. For example, maps can represent average of meal costs across the 5 boroughs, estimates of how much additional income food insecure households need, and comparison of food cost growth over time. Again, these visuals allow users to connect economic pressures with food access outcomes in what we hope is a more intuitive way. This next section connects the food system to climate, and here we highlight, on one hand, the role of food systems in greenhouse gas emissions, as well as the city efforts around plant-based meals and reducing food waste. And it also reflects, this section of the dashboard, the city's long-standing efforts to integrate sustainability into food policy through all those food metrics reports Lauren previewed previously, and to make those connections visible through the data. And again, as an example, here we see one detailed example focused on food waste diversion specifically. So here the dashboard can track total organic waste collected, trends over time, and differences across boroughs with options to filter by geography. So these are the drop-down menus in the upper right corner. And these data, again, are available now, thankfully, through NYC open data, and they can help us illustrate progress and identify opportunities for scaling food waste reduction efforts across city agencies. And last but not least, in this last section, we link the food environment data to health outcomes. So here we focus both on health condition and health behaviors, recognizing that disparities in access to healthy food are really closely tied to disparities in diet-related disease. So here the dashboard will help us bring these relationships into clearer focus, and then can also be overlaid across multiple of the themes we just previewed and the indicators from the other food policy domain we just reviewed previously. And finally, here is an example of health behavior data. You can see the geographic variation, for example, in fruit and vegetable consumption, as well as sugary drink intake across the boroughs. And with these type of visualizations, we can quickly identify disparities and begin asking deeper questions about what is actually driving these disparities. And I'll stop here. I think this gives us a quick preview of the types of themes and visualizations we're bringing into the dashboard. And what I've shown you so far are mostly static snapshots, but the real power of the platform comes from its interactivity. So with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague Yvette, who will walk us through the live demo of the food insecurity and food assistance section and show how users can explore this data in real time.
Great. Thank you, Rositsa. All right. So I'll just briefly walk through the food insecurity and food assistance section. I had shown this kind of subpage where we have our 4 topics. So I'll dive right into the first one, which is the SNAP program. And so the idea here is to understand who is participating in SNAP, both from a point in time and comparing across different areas, as well as looking at trends over time. And these data are publicly available. It's taken from the Department of Social Services data set that they upload to open data. We also incorporate 2020 census data to calculate percent of population. And so depending on your particular need or use, percent of population may be the metric of most interest to you. However, perhaps number of households or number of participants may be more relevant. And so we have the filter up at top that will allow you to select your metric of choice. And so looking at the map to the left, we have New York City. Each community district is color-coded by the percent of the population on SNAP, with the darker areas showing higher percentages. Some community districts up in the Bronx on the order of 50%. 5%. If you look at number of households or number of participants instead, it reveals community districts in Brooklyn that have very high numbers. For example, this borough here, which I believe is name of the borough, but this has 700,000 participants. So this is the highest community district in terms of numbers. We can also filter by geographic areas. So we have citywide shown by default, but you can drill down to the borough level as well as to the community district. Looking at the line graph, we can see temporal trends over the past several years of SNAP participation. And what we can see at the citywide level is, regardless of what metric we're looking at, we're seeing increases since 2019. If we want to drill down into a borough, looking at Brooklyn as an example, you can see similar trends as the citywide averages with increases over time. You can even drill down to the community district level. Interestingly, you can find some insights that may be surprising or maybe not. So in this particular case, Community District 304, which is highlighted here on the map, this is actually showing a decrease in SNAP participation, both as a percent of population as well as number of participants. So maybe this is a good indicator that the need is no longer there, or perhaps if you're working in this area and you're a community organization, this may be something to further explore to understand whether greater outreach is needed, for example. And then finally on the bottom, we have two static visuals in the green box, citywide numbers. So we can see in June of 2025, and I should mention, so these are all monthly averages. In June of 2025, there was close to 23% of the citywide population participating in SNAP. This amounts to over 1 million households and 1.8 million individuals. The donut chart to the right shows you that breakdown of the 1.8 million. So you can see about 35% of that 1.8 million were residing in Brooklyn versus 28% in the Bronx, and so on. We talked a little bit about SNAP outreach. We have some additional information in this additional page, which we can access just clicking on this green bar on the bottom. And so this just shows a little bit about the importance of SNAP outreach. The line graph shows time trends of the Program Access Index, which is a USDA metric that is essentially a very rough proxy of SNAP reach. So it looks at the fraction of people with income below 125% of the federal poverty level who receive SNAP benefits. So higher percentages indicates potentially greater reach. And so we can see here historically, New York City has had a higher PAI than the national average. That being said, the Department of Social Services estimates that 2 out of every 10 individuals that are eligible for SNAP are not enrolled in the program. For whatever reason, it could be that they're not aware they're eligible or that they're reluctant to enroll for whatever reason. And so these outreach efforts at DSS and working with community partners across the city are really important to highlight. So in 2025, there were 651 SNAP outreach events, working with 78 community partners and engaging with over 7,000 clients or potential clients. That's what we have so far for SNAP. Moving on to the WIC program. And so just to orient you on the information on this page, on the right-hand side, we have details on participation by category. In total, we have 251,000 participants in July of 2025. That's broken out by over half of these participants being children, 22% women, and 19% infants. So there's less than 1 year old. You can see the same breakdown at the borough level in the bar chart below here. And so we can see that Brooklyn is the borough with the highest numbers of WIC participants, followed by the Bronx. On the left-hand side, we have highlighted some information relating to services for WIC participants. So namely WIC agencies, so places where people can sign up for benefits or receive different types of services like nutrition education associated with the WIC program, or WIC retailers where participants can use their food benefits and purchase WIC eligible foods. And so this table just shows the numbers of agencies and retailers at the borough level, and the map below shows these locations for WIC agencies. Oops, sorry. There we go. So for WIC agencies, here's the 95 scattered throughout the city. And for WIC retail locations, certainly looks like there's a lot of retail locations throughout the city, but perhaps you can use this tool to identify maybe potential underserved areas. For example, in Staten Island, perhaps there may be some areas that participants could benefit from additional areas or additional retail locations. Similarly, in Manhattan, perhaps this is a neighborhood that is potentially underserved. But one of the things that we want to add to these maps to contextualize the information better and be more informative for these types of questions, for policymakers, for advocates, is to add those background layers that Rositsa mentioned before. So perhaps color coding the background in terms of level of food insecurity, income level, or poverty, to just really provide more context to these maps. So moving on to community food connection. As Lauren described, this is the city's emergency food program. It provides over 700 provides support to 700 food pantries and soup kitchens throughout the city. Rositsa already showed you the information here. This data is from open data as well. And so we can see longitudinally the food pantry visits. So these are yearly totals. We can see the marked increase starting in 2019 with 2024 clocking in around 33 million food pantry visits citywide. Similarly, we can see the information for soup kitchens and a similar rise in terms of number of meals served over time. As mentioned, the middle shows the breakdown of food pantries and soup kitchens citywide, as well as at the borough level. And so we can see that Brooklyn has the most food pantries, Manhattan has the most soup kitchens. The map to the right shows the distribution of these locations. And we can actually use the bar graph to further filter down. So if I'm interested just in looking at Manhattan, I can click on Manhattan here, and the map will zoom into these locations. We can also further filter down and click on the section of the bar graph looking at soup kitchens, and again, it will filter to these locations, and you can hover over any of these points to get some additional information. And similar to the WIC maps, we want to add these background layers so that these maps can be more informative for programmatic decisions, policy making, and just really informing how the community food connection can optimize services to city residents. And so finally, moving on to the last section is food insecurity. So SNAP, WIC, CFC, these are all programs to help prevent food insecurity or to alleviate food insecurity. Looking at the food insecurity data in context is important. And this data is taken from Feeding America's Map the Meal Gap. And what you can see in the upper right is both the overall population as well as children, looking at it citywide, as well as the borough breakdown. And so what we can see here is consistent with the national trend. Unfortunately, children actually experience food insecurity at higher rates than the overall population. And you can also see which boroughs have less food insecurity versus the citywide average and which ones have more. If you're interested in absolute numbers. That's what's reflected in these boxes below. So the 17% citywide food insecurity rate translates to around 1.4 million people, of which 422,000 are children. And then we have borough-specific numbers as well, which these numbers shown here are based on this filter up above on the left-hand side. So we can select our borough of interest, and this is changing not only these boxes down below, but the line graph. And so this line graph shows trends over time for food insecurity at the borough level overall. So for the overall population, the solid line in green, as well as different race ethnicity groups. And so what we can see here is regardless of your borough that you're selecting, we see increases in food insecurity since 2021. We see disparities across groups, and we also see that these disparities are widening over time for the most part. And, if you're a community organization working to address food insecurity, hopefully the information here is useful to help with your various grant applications, to gather your data for your needs assessment, along with some of the other data we showed in the previous tabs. So that's another way, hopefully, that this dashboard can be used by advocates, community partners, and others. So that's our sneak preview. It's still very much a work in progress, but we were eager to get your initial thoughts and feedback. And so with that, I will turn it back over to Lauren.
Yes, thanks, Yvette, for walking us through it. Yes, and we would love everyone's feedback. So we're actually going to do a Mentimeter, and I'll explain what that is for folks who haven't utilized it before. Michael will drop in the chat the link to the Mentimeter. Essentially, this is a platform where we can field questions from the audience in real time. You'll see answers populate on the screen. So we have some multi-answer questions and some open-ended questions to get your feedback and initial thoughts on the dashboard and hear a little bit about what the usefulness of this might be for you. So I'll give folks some time to start joining in. As folks continue to join, I'll just go to our first question here. Which industry best applies to you? Are you from government, nonprofit, research, education? Are you student, private sector, or other? Great. Nonprofits are strong in here today, as well as government. Okay, I'll go to the next question. So this one is a scaled question. I would use a public dashboard like this / with this level of content. You can rank this from strongly agree to strongly disagree. All right, thank you. And moving on to the next one. If you agreed or strongly agreed, what would you most likely use a dashboard like this for? And you can select up to 3. That could be research, policy analysis, advocacy, grant writing, teaching, community planning, or media and journalism. Moving on to the next one. This one's about the look and feel of the dashboard so far. These are 2 statements that you can strongly agree or strongly disagree. The first being the dashboard is visually appealing. The second being the dashboard appears simple to navigate. All right, moving to the next one. This one is open-ended. What data about the food system do you wish were easier to access? The cost of groceries, definitely. Yes, in our affordability tab, I think that's one of the goals for including. Of course, trying to track the prices of food can be a challenge. And there's some researchers that have done work towards that. And so it's something that we want to definitely try to incorporate in our affordability section. More on health behaviors and outcomes, which retail locations, institutions are interested in buying local food. Definitely. Disaggregated data based on age and disability. Yes, we're definitely aiming to include demographic data as well into the dashboard to be able to overlay that with the elements that we currently have. We could talk more about that too. Food quality, local food sourcing, rates of diet-related illness. Yes. GFPP values. Yes, we actually have currently a separate dashboard of our good food purchasing initiative here in the city that's on our website that is available to dive into and learn more about where the city is buying its food from. So we do have a dashboard available currently that does that. Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you all so much for this feedback. And then next, this is also, you could select up to 3. What topic areas are of most interest to you? Food insecurity and food assistance. These are the tabs that we had in the dashboard. Meals served through city agencies, healthy food access and retail environment, food affordability, food and climate, nutrition and health outcomes. Great. So it seems food insecurity, healthy food access and retail and food affordability are the top 3. Then lastly, we want to know what's missing, what can be improved based on what you saw today. Is there anything that you wish were here but isn't currently? We really are going to be taking this feedback back to the drawing board and figure out what opportunities can we expand upon as we continue development over the next few months. So this is open-ended question as well. Yeah, we're aiming to release the dashboard in the summer, early fall of this year. And so we're continuing to develop and refine the dashboard. So your input is really helpful for this. Okay, impact of SNAP on households, food access and health outcomes. Food costs and more information about quality of food available. Yeah, quality of food is also important and something for us to consider how to loop into our dashboard. Clarity on data sources. Yep. We currently, I think I saw this question in the chat also about where you could figure out where the sources are from. So again, the dashboard isn't quite released just yet, but in the draft dashboard pages that you saw, we included the source in text format at the bottom left-hand corner of each of the pages. I think our goal is to be able to have on a given page the ability to download the underlying data set for that page. So yeah, we definitely want to make sure that it's clear like where the data came from, when it was last updated, and how someone can download the data to do some analysis on it. Okay, storytelling, community photos to help drive interest and engagement, or links to something like this to drive use of the dashboard and data. Yes, definitely. Actually, glad that you mentioned storytelling. We do on the dashboard have a tab for data stories. We didn't show it today because we haven't developed a data story just yet, but the goal of that tab is to really be able to have more of that narrative piece while integrating data that's relevant and timely. So see it as like a opportunity to do like a research brief and narrative to give the story behind the data that we're seeing. So I'm really excited to be able to have the data stories tab to be able to tell a little bit more behind the data and integrate maps and charts and other visualizations in that section. Great. Great. This is all really helpful. Thank you all. I think that's our, oops. Yep, that's our last page. Okay, great. Thank you all so much. Really appreciate your feedback. And now we'll go ahead to debrief and discussion. So if you have any questions that you'd like to ask in the chat or any comments, feel free to do. You can also use the raise hand feature and come off mute to ask your question or comment.
Yeah, just a quick question in the chat from Rabia. They had a question for the CUNY team. How long has this development taken thus far?
Yeah, thank you. No, that's a good question. I should mention that this work comes on the heels of a previous collaboration with a broader group of partners, including the Mayor's Office of Food Policy that started in 2021 through a pilot NSF-funded dashboard project. And we really appreciated the opportunity to start thinking through how this, from static to dynamic, the interactive nature of presenting the data and allowing hopefully broader access to it, a wider range of community members, policy advocates, and researchers can come to life. So I would say the seeds of this work, not considering prior work, research, and publications on the dynamic dashboards, really are in this initial 2021-2022 one-year planning grant we received from NSF. And then on the heels of this work, we were very fortunate to collaborate more recently with specifically Mayor's Office of Food Policy in the past year and really delve into what is the best platform, how to make it comprehensive, because the pilot did focus only on a subset of food equity metrics. And here we are, as some of you mentioned in the chat, expanding the view to cover the full breadth of food metrics reporting since 2012 and 2011 when the local law was signed. It's certainly a broad effort and it takes time. Thank you.
There's also an additional question from Allison. They weren't able to access the Menti. Is there a way to get the link without the QR code? And is it too late for them to add comments, or can they email someone?
Yeah, you definitely can reach out to us. I'll share the screen with our contact information for those who might have additional comments or weren't able to access the Mentimeter. Again, as we're continuing to develop this, if you have questions or comments about what you saw today, like, we're welcome to hearing from you and helping to use your feedback to inform how we continue to develop the dashboard. So yes, feel free to reach out to us at nycfood@cityhall.nyc.gov and urbanfoodpolicy@sph.cuny.edu. I'm happy to answer like one or two questions if other folks may have.
Yeah, please feel free to unmute yourself if you have any additional questions.
Hey folks, I just want to jump on and say this was by far my favorite NYC Open Data Week session. I work for the New York City Health Department, and this is exactly the type of data that we need to do community planning, to do policy research, advocacy work. And so I'm just so encouraged by the fact that CUNY is working in partnership with the Mayor's Office on Food Policy. I'll look forward to additional work that comes out from you all. And I will say, I'm sure you all are already thinking about this, but thinking ahead to next year as far as HR1 impacts on SNAP and food assistance programs, this will be an especially salient policy and public health issue to focus on. And just wanted to hop on here, applaud the work that you're doing. This is exactly the type of dashboards and Power BI that we're building at the health department as well. So I can see a lot of synergy between the work that you all are doing with us. So just want to say thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you. Thank you. Really appreciate that, and are happy to collaborate with other city agencies. It's exciting to see city agencies get really dedicated about the data and the transparency of the data, having things publicly available. So in any way that we can collaborate with city agencies that are also working to modernize their reporting systems, we're happy to do. So thank you for your comment. Appreciate it. Great. Noting that we're just at time. Again, thank you all for joining us this afternoon and for participating in Open Data Week. Just want to remind you all there's also additional sessions happening throughout the week, so be sure to check the schedule. Thank you all again. Your feedback's really important for us to continue to advance the dashboard work. And we'll also be in contact with all who registered for the session to let you know once the dashboard is published. We hope that you'll be able to utilize it once it's released.